summer ITV Hub is fully loaded with loads more full series.
Order place to buy British pound at 124.92. So I'm placing an order to buy British pound at 124.92.
Give me some more.
ITV Hub fully loaded this summer.
The best experience possible.
Did we mention it's looking fuller than ever?
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
Heidi Stroud-Watts on Daybreak Asia.
Global coronavirus cases topping 11.3 million. This as over the weekend, the World Health Organization reports a single-day record in new infections globally. Let's bring in Raina McIntyre, who's the head of biosecurity, the program there at the University of New South Wales Kirby Institute. We're continuing to see an uptick in cases across major parts of the US as well. What are we collectively doing wrong at the moment, 6 months into from when we learnt about this?
Long on British pound at 924.92.
That means finding every case and isolating them, and that depends on testing. And many countries have had a shortage of tests or a limited capacity to test, including the United States. Secondly, we need to track all their contacts and quarantine them so that they don't pass on infection to others if they get infected. And whether or not you test those people, everyone among them or not, is another question. And thirdly, the social distancing, and that ranges from just keeping a distance of 1 to 2 metres between people to a full lockdown. And things in between might be banning of mass gatherings.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Global stock markets starting the week higher after China's influential state media stoked bullish enthusiasm. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong entered a bull market. The dollar's falling for a 5th day. Treasuries dipping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 40 points. Dow futures up 400. NASDAQ futures up 130. The DAX in Germany is up 1.9%. 10-year Treasury down 6/30 seconds. Yield 0.68%. Yield on the 2-year, 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.4% or 18 cents at $40.82 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.4% or $6.70 at $17.8320 an ounce. The euro 1.1297 against the dollar. British pound 1.2492, and the yen is at 107.57. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, we're coming off the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections. U.S. cases continue to surge with a pace above last week's average. California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas continue to see increases. India's coronavirus epidemic became the 3rd biggest in the world, surpassing Russia. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said it is too early to tell if it is safe to host part of the Republican National Convention next month in Florida, where coronavirus cases have been surging. It was moved from Charlotte, North Carolina, because of virus concerns from the state's Democratic governor. Fatal shootings reported in numerous U.S. cities over the July 4th holiday weekend. In at least 4 cases, the victims were children. Chicago police say a 7-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy were among 13 people shot and killed in the city. In Atlanta, an 8-year-old girl was killed in a shooting. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 6:19 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. Columnist Ferdinando Giuliano is with us this morning, looking at why Europe seems to be in a better position than the United States when it comes to the ongoing pandemic. Good morning, Ferdinando. Obviously, cases are surging here in the U.S., while Europe has imposed a travel ban on Americans. in response. What do you see behind the different approaches between the U.S. and Europe?
Well, I think it's first of all a matter of institutions. I mean, in Europe, I think we have stronger public health systems, which I think are better suited to deal with an infection such as COVID-19. And on top of that, I think if you look at what's happening with unemployment, which is spiking in the U.S., although it's coming down now, while as opposed to Europe, where it's been roughly stable. In Europe, we have much broader use of short-time scheme furlough, which means that companies don't have to fire their workers, only to hire them again after a few months. So I think it's institutions are playing a big role here, and that explains the diverging paths the U.S. and Europe are taking.
Now, given the differences between institutions, do aspects like the furlough schemes in Europe run the risk of digging the continent into a deeper debt hole?
Well, there is that fear, of course. But remember, if you end up with a prolonged recession, that creates debt as well. So I am worried about the way the labor market in the U.S. is working at the moment, because it risks creating a vicious spiral of unemployment and low consumption, which then creates further unemployment. And of course, all of that adds to the very precarious health situation. Now, the hope in Europe is that really the situation is getting under control and the economy can rebound more quickly. Now we're seeing some evidence of that. Of course, the medical situation remains uncertain and to some extent beyond our control. But I think so far the impression is that Europe is managing this better.
Of course, there's been a state-by-state approach to dealing with the pandemic here in the U.S. What kind of coordination among members of the Eurozone are we seeing, and is that helping as well?
So from the health point of view, there is little, but I think there is a much more homogeneous approach compared to what's happening in the U.S. I think the differences between European states paradoxically are not looking as big as what we're seeing in the U.S. Of course, there is the exception of Sweden, which we've heard a lot about, where there were no lockdowns or just very mild measures taken. But otherwise, we've seen similar measures. When it comes to the economy, well, there is a lot of coordination going on in Europe. The European Central Bank stimulating the economy across the board, of course, but also there is this first steps taking towards a form of fiscal union with this recovery fund, which is being negotiated, and a number of other measures for unemployment. And all of this, I think, is a step in the right direction for the future of Europe as well. So less coordination healthcare-wise, but certainly a lot more coordination than in the past on the economic front.
With the kinds of fiscal schemes that we're seeing in Europe, does it run the risk of propping up companies that might have deeper problems and would otherwise run into issues of their own accord?
Well, that's my biggest fear, is that Europe has kind of frozen its economy, both in terms of guaranteeing loans from banks to companies and in terms of these furlough schemes. So I think we must hope that banks are being selective in the way they've given their money. And especially, I think governments must take a much more proactive role in helping, for example, workers to retrain, because some companies will go bust, the economy will change, perhaps there will be some long-term changes which we'll have to deal with, and we can't expect the workforce of today and the companies of today, all of them, to survive this crisis. Things will have to change.
Thanks for this, Ferdinando. Good having you on with us this morning. That is Bloomberg opinion columnist Ferdinando Giuliano, and you can read his column. It is called Why Europe's in Better Shape Than the U.S., and more from Bloomberg Opinion by heading over to Bloomberg.com/opinion or on the Bloomberg terminal. Just type OPIN GO to get all the resources from our Bloomberg Opinion columnists. S&P futures are higher now by 41 points, building on gains in the pre-market. Dow futures up 413, NASDAQ futures higher by 133 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Southwest Airlines says that about 10% of its workforce has applied for voluntary exits as the company takes steps to meet reduced travel demand amid the pandemic. More than 2,000 workers are seeking to leave through early retirement or buyouts. Another 4,200 want to take extended leaves ranging from 6 to 18 months that preserve seniority, benefits, and a certain percentage of income. Bloomberg has learned that Uber has agreed to acquire Postmates in an all-stock takeover valued at almost $2.7 billion. The takeover would help Uber gain ground against food delivery market leader DoorDash. Stock futures point to gains at the open after the long holiday weekend. Investors are focused on the prospects for more economic stimulus to help counter the impact of the spreading coronavirus pandemic. Just before the holiday weekend, the June employment report in the U.S. came in stronger than forecast. And overall, for the shortened week, the broader U.S. equity market was up 4%. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Debbie Hart.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this morning. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that washing machine can handle all that laundry. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Monday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Like right now? Get your cook on later with Asda. Get 3 for £3 on snacks like a 5-pack of Cathedral City nibbles and Dairylea Lunchables. Peckish anyone? Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Lunchables 63 grams to 83.4 grams. Prices £1.50 to £1.55. Offers end 22nd of July.
Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Global stocks are rallying despite the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections. U.S. cases continue to surge in California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas, where Harris County Chief Executive Lena Hidalgo is asking the state for help.
As long as we're doing as little as possible and hoping for the best, we're always going to be chasing this thing. We're always going to be behind, and the virus will always outrun us.
Hidalgo is calling for more restrictions to limit the spread of the virus, but she says the state's blocked officials from taking appropriate measures. Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego paints a similar picture. She's asking the federal government for help. Gallego spoke on ABC's This Week, heard on Bloomberg Radio.
We've asked FEMA if they could come and do community-based testing here. We were told they're moving away from that, which feels like they're declaring victory while we're still in crisis mode.
Meantime, the White House is touting the economic recovery and the June jobs report. Labor Secretary Eugene Scalia appeared on Fox News Sunday, also heard on Bloomberg Radio.
We saw really big gains in manufacturing, we saw gains in construction, and we saw gains across really nearly all demographic groups. It was a terrific month. But yes, we have new cases. We have to keep an eye on that. I believe that we can continue to reopen our workplaces safely.
Goldman Sachs, however, is more tepid on the recovery. Over the weekend, economists at the firm lowered estimates for GDP this quarter.
At the same time, we're seeing a bullish sign from Warren Buffett, with the billionaire getting back in the deal business. Berkshire Hathaway is purchasing all of Dominion Energy's gas pipeline and storage assets for $4 billion. Berkshire will also assume more than $5 billion of debt. As a result of the deal, Dominion and Duke Energy are killing plans for a controversial gas pipeline along the East Coast.
Uber is also making deals. Sources tell us the company has agreed to acquire Postmates for $2.6 billion. The takeover would help Uber gain ground against DoorDash, the market leader in U.S. food delivery. The acquisition could be announced as soon as today. And futures this morning are on the rise. S&P futures up 38 points. Dow futures up 381. NASDAQ futures up 125. The DAX in Germany is up 1.9%. 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds. Yield 0.68%. The yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil is little changed at $40.63 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.3% or $5.40 at $17.8460 an ounce. The euro at 1.1297 against the dollar. The yen 107.59. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. 6:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Michael?
Thank you very much, Nathan. Phase 3 of reopening from the pandemic is scheduled to begin today in New York City. It means nail salons and spas can reopen with precautions. Tennis courts can also reopen. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo urged people in a tweet to wear a mask, social distance, and be smart. Cuomo says, though, indoor dining will remain closed. Beaches are continuing social distancing. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says he'd like to see a national strategy on the coronavirus, including a mask requirement. Murphy on NBC's Meet the Press says the state is already seeing spikes as a result of the long Independence Day weekend.
We cannot afford to go through hell again. We need a national strategy, I think, right now, and masking has got to be at the core of that.
Meet the Press can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said it is too early to tell if it's safe to host part of the Republican National Convention next month in Florida, where coronavirus cases have been surging. It was originally scheduled to be held in Charlotte, North Carolina, but Democratic Governor Roy Cooper had safety concerns for a full-out convention. Hahn was also pressed about President Trump's claim, without evidence, that 99% of coronavirus cases are totally harmless.
Any case we don't want to have in this country. This is a very rapidly moving epidemic, a rapidly moving pandemic, and any death, any case is tragic.
Hahn spoke on ABC's This Week, which can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio. At least 6 people were killed and dozens were hurt in a rash of shootings in New York boroughs Sunday. 2 NYPD officers also suffered minor injuries in the Bronx and Brooklyn. In Atlanta, armed protesters had taken over an area near the burned-out Wendy's where Rashard Brooks was killed by a police officer weeks ago. Now, an 8-year-old girl is dead. Police say Sakura Turner was in the car her mom was driving, and as they tried to pull into a parking lot, they were stopped by armed individuals. Shots were fired on the car, and Turner was shot and killed. Atlanta's Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms.
I want to see the same anger and outrage. I want us to see it on behalf of Sequoia and all the other people and children who are getting shot in our streets.
The child's father told a local TV station, they say Black Lives Matter. You killed your own this time. You killed a child. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mike Labar. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is coming up to 6:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Burden Accountants and Advisors Sports Report. Here's John Stashak.
Nathan, the Yankees hit hard by injuries last season and in spring training, and on opening day of their summer camp, Masahiro Tanaka got drilled in the head by a Giancarlo Stanton line drive. But the news on Tanaka is good. A mild concussion, released from the hospital. He made a surprise appearance at the stadium yesterday. Aaron Boone says they dodged a bullet. Meanwhile, Washington Nationals reliever Sean Doolittle questions why they're playing.
We're trying to bring baseball back during a pandemic that's killed 130,000 people. We're way worse off as a country than where we were in March when we shut this thing down. And, look at where other developed countries are in their response to this. We haven't done any of the things that other countries have done to bring sports back.
Doolittle is with his team now, but admits he has considered opting out. Rangers and Islanders finally know where they are headed. Toronto, the NHL, took a look at the coronavirus situation in the U.S., decided to stick with north of the border. So the Eastern Conference games will be in Toronto, the West in Edmonton. Training camps to officially open in team cities in 1 week. And then July 25th or 6th, it's off to the hub cities with games to be played starting August 1st. The Nets, one of several NBA teams to close their practice facility. They were hit by the virus back in March, and again recently. Wilson Chandler and DeAndre Jordan are not going to play. Spencer Dinwiddie isn't sure. He's got the virus. And Garrett Temple says he considered not playing. He admits to nerves as they get ready to go to Orlando on Thursday. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. Coronavirus cases are climbing. GDP forecasts are falling, but stocks are still on the rise. U.S. futures and European equities are gaining after a strong showing in Asia. Freddie Late is Chief Investment Officer at Latitude Investment.
I think we're in this trade-off between knowing that the rest of this year is going to be very difficult, knowing that next year is probably going to be very difficult, and most people aren't expecting 21 levels of earnings to get back to even 2019, and yet markets can rally through that. And the underlying theory behind that is, where else are you going to put your money? Isn't the best single investment, high-quality businesses on a global basis?
Well, right now, S&P futures are up 1.2%. In Europe, the stock 600 is higher by almost 1.5%. China's CSI 300 led gains in Asia overnight with a gain of 5.6%. On the economic front today, we get data on the services sector from the Institute for Supply Management. Economists predict the ISM non-manufacturing index hit 50 for the first time in 4 months. And we get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
It's going to be a long road back based on recent COVID-19 flare-ups that have stymied a variety of services, including bars and theaters. Travel and tourism continue to hurt as Americans shelter and work from home. In May, the ISM non-manufacturing index signaled contraction for the second month in a row, marking the first back-to-back contraction since the recession year of 2009. At the same time, though, a measure of supplier deliveries tied to the report signaled improvement. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thanks, Vinny. It's 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Jeff Bellinger.
Greenpeace and others have raised concerns about the pandemic harming the environment as infection concerns reverse progress in getting consumers to switch to reusable bags, cups, and straws. But not all of the news is bad. Having people working from home has reduced carbon emissions. And while the current state of affairs won't go on forever, many companies have indicated they will adopt long-term work-from-home policies that will make a bit of a difference as the coronavirus recedes. Telecommuting not only eliminates the air pollution caused by actual commuting, paper and plastic waste from cups and takeout meals is reduced. And it appears people who are working from home are also thinking more about being eco-friendly. Google says searches for how to live a sustainable lifestyle were up more than 4,000% in the days leading up to Earth Day this year. And a Bright Horizon survey found that once people adopt sustainable behaviors, they often stick with them. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Now some other stories we're following. Banks are giving up their stronghold on London offices. Barclays may ditch its investment bank headquarters there. Credit Suisse is getting rid of 9 floors of office space, and Morgan Stanley is reviewing its entire London footprint. Thousands of job cuts are expected to follow what is forecast to be the worst recession in 3 centuries. A surprise resignation at Lloyd's Banking Group. CEO Antonio Horta Osorio will leave after a decade at the British bank. He'll stay until next June. Horta Osorio steered Lloyd's to profitability and full private ownership after a bailout during the financial crisis. Futures moving higher. S&P futures up 36 points. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you are thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
When your tenants have a burst pipe right in the middle of your busy day, superheroes crashing through the wall isn't going to help anyone. With Direct Line Landlord Emergency added to your policy, we're on it to send a rather super plumber in 4 hours before you've even sat down to dinner. We can also assemble locksmiths, glaziers, electricians and drainage engineers. Search Direct Line Landlord Emergency. We're on it. Direct Line. Residential properties. Optional add-on up to $1,500 per caller. Extreme weather conditions may extend response time. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
With the shift to remote working, video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work-from-home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not get road ready with a free car check worth £15 at all our stores and garages? With 25,000 weekly slots available at 700 locations, you can count on us to get you safely back on the road. Or even back beside the seaside. From MOTs to tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
When family video calls are too good to miss.
Your virtual quiz team is demanding a rematch. And one more episode just isn't enough. You need loads of data. Get a massive 30 gig for £10 a month from Smarty Mobile. With no speed restrictions, unlimited calls and texts, and a flexible 1-month plan, it's no wonder you Switch awarded Smarty Best Value SIM-Only Network 2020. Search Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. See smarty.co.uk.
News and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
President Trump led Independence Day celebrations at Mount Rushmore and in Washington, D.C. this past weekend.
At his Saturday night celebration of America at the White House, the president telling first responders who were invited and others.
We have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless.
The president did not explain what he means by 99% harmless. On CNN's State of the Union, though, Stephen Hahn, commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, avoided agreeing with the president, pushing back on the claim prudently.
That we have data in the White House task force. Those data show us that this is a serious problem. People need to take it seriously.
Bob Costantini, Washington.
Asian stock markets have risen as investors look ahead for data they hope will support a global economic rebound. Benchmarks in Shanghai, Tokyo, and Hong Kong all advanced. I'm John Trout.
Pandemic information is coming at you so quickly, it's hard to react, never mind plan.
How bad do you think it's going to get?
How much more cutting do you need to do?
Here's help. Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Global stock markets are starting the week higher after China's influential state media stoked bullish enthusiasm. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong entering a bull market. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 35 points. Dow futures up 363. NASDAQ futures up 120. The DAX in Germany's up 1.7%. 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds, yield 0.68%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil is little changed at $40.65 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.3% or $4.80 at $17.8520 an ounce. The euro 1.1292 against the dollar. British pound 1.2495, and the yen is at 107.56. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
We're coming off the biggest one-day increase in global coronavirus infections. U.S. cases continue to surge with a pace above last week's average. California, Florida, Arizona, and Texas continue to see increases. India's coronavirus epidemic became the third biggest in the world, surpassing Russia. Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice rejected White House assertions that President Trump wasn't told of intelligence that Russia may have offered bounties on American troops. Rice says we have a president who is doing our arch adversary's bidding. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 648 on Wall Street. Let's get more now on what's happening in D.C. after a 4th of July weekend altered by the pandemic. As Michael mentioned, hotspots like California, Texas, Arizona, and Florida continue to see dramatic surges in coronavirus infection and positive testing rates.
We opened way too early in Arizona. We were one of the last states to go to stay at home and one of the first to reemerge, and we reemerged at 0 to 60.
Democratic Mayor of Phoenix, Kate Gallego, was on ABC's This Week. Carlos Jimenez is the Republican mayor of Miami-Dade County. He also thinks his residents...
New order placed for euro at... No, it's already executed, so I purchased at 112.90. So position opened at 112.90. Long, yeah? Okay.
On a timetable.
Our solemn promise to the American people is that we will make a decision based upon the data and science on a vaccine with respect to the safety and effectiveness of that vaccine.
And that's some of what you heard on the political shows that air every Sunday on Bloomberg Radio. And for more, we're joined by Bloomberg News politics editor Kathleen Hunter. So as we've been following for days, if not weeks now, the virus is surging in what happen to be some key presidential battleground states. How is that affecting support for President Trump?
Well, I think it's an interesting trend and certainly one to watch that, you just heard from public officials in places like Arizona and Florida. And those are two key examples of states where, there's been recent polling indicating a large drop-off in support for the president, both in terms of his approval ratings and also in terms of the approval specifically of his handling of the coronavirus. And so I think there's a sense really that Trump is sort of being that voters are blaming Trump to an extent, particularly in these battleground states where the virus is surging, that there's a lot of discontent with how it's being handled at the federal level.
And it's interesting to see that as this continues, the president is talking a lot less about the pandemic itself and responding to it and focusing more.
Stop on profit on British pound at 124.94. So I'm placing a stop on profit for British pound at 124.94.
White House, we saw that really emphasized this weekend in a pair of speeches that Trump gave, one at Mount Rushmore and one in Washington. And I think that, it's a strategy that may or may not work, but one certainly that he's embracing, where he's looking to really tie Joe Biden to the far left wing of the party and what he's already kind of assailed, in terms of blaming the Black Lives Matter protests on, the far left, the far radical left. And kind of casting it in those terms and then looking to tie Biden to that. I think that is, potentially a strategy that we're likely to see him continue going forward. It's not entirely dissimilar from the approach he took to Hillary Clinton in 2016. And so particularly because he ended up winning that race, I think it's likely we see that strategy continue. But I think there's a real question there. Joe Biden has a long record of, policy, for better or worse, Joe Biden has a long record in Washington of policy decisions and policy stances. And the reality is that he's not a far left politician. And so I think, it remains to be seen how effective Trump's attempts to tie him to that end up being.
Well, how is the Biden campaign reacting to the president's rhetoric?
Well, they're pushing back pretty hard against it. They sent a memo around to supporters that we have a story about out this morning that essentially, says that these attacks that the Trump campaign have lodged have so far pretty much fallen flat. And so that's certainly their position, and I would expect them to continue to push back pretty hard against that.
And we do know that the president is planning to hold another rally this weekend in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And it looks as though he's changing his tune somewhat on the idea of whether to encourage social distancing and mask wearing.
Yeah, the White House, or the Trump campaign in this case, is going to make masks available for people at this event in New Hampshire on Saturday. And that's a pretty big change for the president in particular, who, has refused, as we all know, to wear a mask in public. But we did see him last week in an interview, basically say, I'm okay with masks. I don't think they necessarily need to be required, but, masks are fine. And so it's been this kind of slow change from pretty vocal opposition to kind of acceptance of masks. And I think that's pretty significant. And certainly after we saw the Tulsa rally a few weeks ago, which was, very sparsely attended, certainly more sparsely attended than the White House than the Trump campaign had anticipated. I think, this is potentially a significant development that we're seeing now. Perhaps not it's not a requirement to wear a mask, but, at least it could be read as an encouragement to do so because these masks are going to be handed out.
Thanks for this, Kathleen. Good talking with you this morning. That's Bloomberg News politics editor Kathleen Hunter. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. At a 6:54 on Wall.
I closed position on British pound at 124.94. Profit £200.
Otto is an Italian restaurant in Newark, Delaware. His revenue fell off a cliff after the pandemic, but he hasn't had to lay off staff. And Ryan joins us now. Tell us what you've been doing to prop up the business there.
We did not want to lay anyone off, so we went back to old-fashioned guerrilla marketing. We made a bunch of flyers the flyer said that we were going to open our marketplace, which is basically grocery delivery and grocery pickup. And we were going to offer home meals. And then we had to pivot a little bit also, just to keep revenues up, just to keep people working. We decided to do some outdoor services.
Now, that is quite a pivot for a restaurant owner to pivot the business completely into a different field. Tell me about that. How did you come up with that idea, and are the workers actually experienced at that?
From a service side, I mean, being in the service industry, there are some parallels, which is nice, but it is a big change, and we're pretty lucky that our staff was on board. And what we did is we kind of divided them up in teams. So we brought an experienced painter in with maybe two people that were a little bit less experienced, or an experienced mason in with a couple guys that could run sand and carry bricks so that he could lay the patios. And by doing that, we've been able to replace, I'd say, about 2/3 of